Was not expecting that. Well, hello everyone. It's such a pleasure to join you again today. I was going to tell a joke and I just don't want to tell it anymore. So I'm just gonna, as I get started, I'd like to recognize the support I've received from my good friends at Read Speaker. Maybe you've heard of them recently even. They're one of my absolute favorite vendors in the EdTech space. I've worked with them for many years at different events. And we gave away a few Hawaiian shirts today, including the one to Carol, but a few others you'll see floating around here. And so that worked out great. I'm glad to share the Hawaiian shirt love. I have a few stories for you today. Let's start at the beginning of my time in higher education. After high school, my plan was to be an attorney. Not a highfalutin, high hourly rate attorney, but more of a public defender or an attorney for people who can't afford an attorney. I think the working title of the TV show was Better Call Bear. While waiting for acceptance to law school, I decided to get an undergrad degree. Not because I wanted to, but because, you have to. So my best friend from high school, that's Cheyenne East High, go T-Birds. It convinced me that an accounting undergrad would be great preparation for law school. There's Leslie in the house, yeah? So I had no interest in that whatsoever. But that's never stopped me before, so off I went. I finished the accounting degree and I started law school the next fall. I hated it. Lots of reasons that I won't go into right now, but I decided to quit halfway through my first semester of law school. Hated it is probably an understatement. So there I sit with a really big question. What comes next? I had no plan B. Except having an accounting degree in hand is a de facto plan B, even if I didn't plan it that way per se. And I know right now you're wondering if I studied Latin. And no, I did not. So I got a job working for a CPA firm in Phoenix. Hated it. Absolutely hated it. Strike two. So I started looking for plan C. At that point I could either string tennis rackets for a living, not much of a living, or I could go back to school and start the master's program at ASU. They gave me a stipend to be an accounting lab assistant. At the end of that first semester, something mystical or magical happened, and I had never been able to really put my finger on this. This would have been December of 1981. There were no cell phones or any other communication devices that we take for granted today. It wasn't easy to get a hold of somebody unless they were within running distance of their landline. So classes were over for Christmas break. I was ready to drive the 957 miles from Tempe, Arizona to Cheyenne, Wyoming for Christmas. I loaded up the bright blue MGB and I headed out. And for some reason that I have never been able to explain, I decided to stop at the business building on my way out of town. Maybe check a grade or wish a prof a Merry Christmas? No, that does not sound like me at all. It's one of those, you walk into the room to get something, you get to the room, you don't know what you're after. That's that feeling. I don't know why, but I still remember getting in the parking lot, going up the stairs, and walking through the doorway of the accounting department, and the secretary just about squeals. We did call them secretaries in those days, so just in case you're wondering. But she squeals like, "There you are!" And I said, "Yep, here I am." And she says, "Well, Dr. Joe has been looking for you, he's been trying to get a hold of you." So Dr. Joe Fritzmeier is the head of the accounting department, and his office is like 3 feet away. So I stick my head in his office, and all of a sudden, he and I are best friends. And he says, "Well, I've been getting great feedback about your accounting lab sessions." And I said, "Well, of course you are." On the inside, I said that. And he says that he wants me to consider something here over the Christmas break. Or actually, I had about 30 seconds to consider, I think is what it was. He says, "How would you like to teach 2 sections of management accounting next semester?" And I say, "What? You mean teach real classes with real students in about 3 weeks from now?" And yep, that's exactly what he meant. Well, I didn't waste any time and said, "Yeah, I'd love it, let's do it." But if I had not walked into that office that day, they would not have been able to get in touch with me. Somebody else would have been assigned those classes, And when they say the rest is history, it would have been a totally different history for me. So all of this was unplanned. I never considered a career in the classroom until it was offered to me. And then I did it, and I loved it. And I realized that I had found my place. I have more stories. Sorry. So I taught 3 more semesters while I finished my master's degree. I actually slowed down my coursework so I could keep teaching because I didn't think there was going to be an opportunity to teach if I wasn't a student anymore. So I did. And then they hired me for another year of full-time work at ASU. And then I moved to Boca Raton, Florida, taught a couple years at Florida Atlantic University. I made a short pit stop at Pitt, which is Pittsburgh University. And that was strike 3, because I entered the PhD program at Pitt. PhD of accounting. You can say it with me. Hated it. Quit at the end of 1 semester. I just don't do things that I don't like. So 3 strikes and you're out, right? No, wrong. Accounting degrees will travel. So I started teaching at the University of Minnesota Duluth. Spent another 6 years teaching there, and then I took a break from academia. Since I had been a kid, I wanted to own a tropical fish store. So I did it. The tropics was almost exactly what I wanted it to be. Not a pet store, a fish store. But one day, a very cute young lady walked in my door, and about 2 years later, we were married. That's her right there. 9 more months and 5 days later, our first child was born. So even though Rita held down 2 jobs, the prospects weren't great for growing our family on the paltry fish store revenue. Due to an illness of a faculty member at Lake Superior College, I had the chance to go back into the accounting classroom with a decent paycheck and great benefits, and so during the winter quarter of 1995, I started teaching at the local community college. I had taught for 11 years at very large, or at least fairly large, universities. My first quarter at the community college was strange, just a stark awakening. Everything just seemed off. Where were the stuffy old profs that wouldn't give an adjunct the time of day? Where were the students who would show up and say, oh, I'm going to miss class for the next 2 weeks while I'm on a transatlantic cruise, or something like that? I felt like a fish out of water. But before long, I started to learn about who my students were, about how much of a difference I could make in their lives. So many of those university students that I taught were the proverbial children born with silver spoons in their mouth. This group was different. And I had the privilege of teaching some very hardworking students. Also, and I think you can attest to this, many of my fellow faculty members were the most decent people that I ever met in academia. I had finally found my people. This is a trilogy of sorts. Here's part 3. I started teaching online classes in 1999, maybe 98, kind of hard to say for sure. At the beginning of one of those summers, summer break, there was a statewide faculty union meeting in the Twin Cities. The main topic was this thing called online learning. There was a great deal of angst, a great deal of FUD, and a certain amount of inevitability in the air. But for every person who was optimistic about this thing that was coming at us, there were about 20 pessimists, approximately. But still, I jumped in with both feet, and I found that I had a decent enough skill level at both creating and teaching online courses. As per usual, as soon as I started to hit my stride as an online faculty member, the powers that be decided to rip me out of the classroom and put me into the meeting room. Well, sort of. Actually, I applied for the dean position that Amy Jo referred to, and I got it, and that made me the person responsible for growing online programs at the college. So life was exciting during those early days. Online ed's growing rapidly. We're making magic on tight budgets, which is really no different today, maybe worse today. But finding new ways to teach subjects that really hadn't changed in years and years and years. Fighting off the naysayers with a big ugly stick. And there were lots of naysayers. Even though my college embraced online programs more than most schools, the naysayers were loud and proud. But we persevered. We started creating some unique offerings and programs, including several award winners. Our physical education, distance education courses were unique, and the online student mentor program was one I was really proud of. I also remember when I started to get thank you notes from students who had received the scholarship for online-only students, something that I started a couple years before I left for college. But even better were the thank you notes that I started receiving from students who I mostly had never met at all. These were completely remote students who just occasionally, out of the blue, somebody would send me some sort of a thank you note for giving them the opportunity to pursue complete online studies for a degree or a promotion at work or whatever it was. Without online students, without online courses, those students would not have been able to do they would not have been able to engage in higher ed. You might take that for granted today, but I did not take it for granted 15 to 20 years ago. So to recap, I didn't know that I was going to work in higher education, but then I found my place. I didn't know that I was eventually going to work at a community college, but then I found my people. And I didn't know that I was going to be an online educator at the community college level, but then I found my passion. And it turns out that if you can find those three things, you have a decent chance of standing in front of a bunch of like-minded people accepting an award someday. And so that's how we got to this point. Speaking of like-minded people, there are many past winners of this award that I'd like to acknowledge. And we've already, Carol introduced Pam Quinn. So I was at the conference in 2008 when Pam won that award, this award. It was in St. Pete Beach. And even though I started going to ITC conferences a couple years before that, she's really the first Lifetime Achievement Award winner that I knew, that I still know. So this award goes way back. It was way before my time with the ITC. So then a few years after that, John Sneed was honored by the ITC. In 2012, one of the most fascinating people I've ever met in my life won this award. That would be Jim McKay. Up next in 2014 was Michael Catchpole from British Columbia. I tried to channel Michael yesterday in the debate because he was the magnificent facilitator of the debate for many, many years, and is a good friend as well. Somebody else who's just a super good friend of mine, unfortunately we just never see each other anymore. In 2020, the ITC honored Rhonda Edwards. Next up was a guy who has lots of energies and always some good stories to tell. He's here in the room today. That's Mickey Slim. Yeah, Texas guy. Yeah. In 2024, we honored a person who is one of my all-time favorite colleagues from our years on the board, and we stay in touch, and that's Lorraine Schmidt. And a lot of you know Lorraine from Oregon, from Portland, and Schmidtkita, if I said that right. T before K, K before T, I don't know. And then last year, the ITC Energizer Bunny won this award. He's still on the board, he's still teaching, still working, still wonking politically, if you know what I mean. That is Fred Locken. And so, go ahead and give them a... So it is a group that I am deeply honored to be joining. Groucho Marx apparently once said that I refuse to join any club that would have me as a member. And it's safe to say that Groucho never met the ITC group. Thank you very much.